Level 1, $500. You open a brokerage account and put in $500, an amount that feels almost embarrassing to call an investment. You buy a broad index fund because someone told you that's what boring, successful people do. You turn on automatic reinvestment without fully understanding what it does. At the end of the first year, your account has earned $47 in gains. $47. You could have made more working a single extra shift. But you're not looking at the $47. You're looking at the fact that the machine turned on at all. That money you didn't touch quietly became slightly more money, without you doing anything except leaving it alone. Level 2, $8,000. You've kept adding, a little every month, whatever you can spare after rent. The market drops 12% in a bad quarter, and you watch $960 evaporate in a matter of weeks. Your hand hovers over the sell button. You don't press it. You've read enough by now to know that selling during a drop converts a temporary loss into a permanent one, and that the only people who actually lose money in downturns are the ones who panic and lock it in. You hold. 6 months later, the account has not only recovered, it's higher than before the drop. You didn't do anything clever. You just didn't do anything at all, and doing nothing turned out to be the hardest and most valuable skill you'd built so far. Level 3, $31,000. Something shifts here that's hard to explain to people who haven't crossed it yet. The gains in a good month start to rival what you're contributing from your paycheck. You run the math on where this could go in 20 years if you never touch it and never stop adding, and the number that comes back feels almost fictional. You start to understand, viscerally rather than just intellectually, that compounding isn't a straight line. It's a curve that looks flat for a long time and then, without warning, stops looking flat at all. You mention the exercise to a friend, half expecting them to be as excited as you are. They nod politely and change the subject. You learn that day that almost nobody wants to hear about a curve that takes 20 years to get interesting. Level 4, $96,000. You're close enough to 6 figures that you check the account more than you'd like to admit, watching the number creep toward a milestone that, you already suspect, won't feel as significant as you've built it up to be in your head. A recession hits. Headlines everywhere use the word crisis. Your account drops $14,000 in 2 months. You keep contributing anyway, at the exact same pace, buying shares at lower prices without any sense of triumph about it, just habit, just the same automated transfer that's been running since level 1 and has never once asked your permission to continue. Level 5, $240,000. The compounding is loud now, even though nobody around you can hear it. A single strong week in the market can add more to your account than 3 months of your actual paycheck. This is the part that reorders how you think about time itself. You stop measuring your progress in months. You start measuring it in years, sometimes in decades, because the short-term noise has become almost irrelevant against the shape of the longer curve. You read your first full annual report from a company you're invested in, all the way through, footnotes included, and you understand for the first time what you actually own instead of just what you've been told to buy. Level 6, $610,000. You cross a threshold where the account's annual growth, in a good year, exceeds your entire salary. You don't quit your job. You don't tell anyone. You keep living in the same apartment, driving the same car, because you've learned by now that the growth only continues if you stay out of its way. A friend asks how you built this, expecting a secret strategy, a hot tip, something clever. You tell them the true answer, and it disappoints them slightly, because the true answer is boring. You automated a percentage of every paycheck, chose broad diversified funds instead of anything exciting, and left it alone for longer than felt comfortable at almost every stage. Level 7, $1,400,000. 7 figures. You cross it on an ordinary Thursday and feel almost nothing, which surprises you more than the number itself does. The account has been quietly doing this work for so long that the milestone feels like an afterthought rather than an arrival. You start thinking about the money differently now, not as a number to grow indefinitely, but as a floor that could support a very different kind of life if you wanted it to. You don't take that life yet. You keep working, keep contributing, because the machine still has decades left to run, and stopping now would mean cutting the curve off right before its steepest part. Level 8, $3,100,000. The growth from here is barely about your contributions anymore. You could stop adding entirely, and the compounding alone would keep carrying the account forward at a pace your first 10 years of saving never came close to matching. This is the strange, almost unbelievable truth about compound interest that nobody believes until they've lived through it themselves. The first million took 19 years to build. The second one took 6. You already suspect the third will take less time than that, and you're right. Level 9. $7,800,000. A market correction wipes out $780,000 in a single bad month, a number larger than your entire net worth was just a few years earlier, and it barely registers the way it once would have. You've built enough of a track record with your own nervous system to trust the process, even when the process is uncomfortable. You know the drop will recover, not because you can predict markets, nobody can, but because every previous drop across every previous level eventually did, and the pattern has held for longer than your own doubts have. Level 10. $16 million. You think back sometimes to the $500 that started all of this, the account that felt almost embarrassing to open, the $47 in first-year gains that felt like nothing at the time. The number now generates more in an ordinary year than most people will earn across an entire working life. But you've stopped being impressed by the number itself. What impresses you, if anything still does, is the shape of the curve, the way it looked flat for so long that quitting seemed reasonable at almost every point along the way, and the way it stopped looking flat all at once, decades after most people would have already given up. You think about how many people abandoned this exact curve somewhere around level 3 or level 4, convinced the flatness meant it wasn't working, when the flatness was never a sign of failure. It was just what the early part of every enormous curve looks like, before anyone can see where it's actually going. Somewhere tonight, someone is opening an account with $500, staring at a number that feels too small to matter, wondering if any of this is worth the effort. They have no idea that the effort was never really about the $500. It was about the 20 years after it, and whether they'd still be adding to it long after it stopped feeling exciting.